I took a lot. I was a horrible human being.
Violence was the way,
Hmm?
right? I mean, I have 3 lower incisors because in a gang fight I got hit with a chain. And that was the days before everybody had a gun, you know. So thank God. I'm sure glad I'd rather lose a tooth than lose my life.
Right. I had a Class A trafficking, a Class B trafficking, a C possession, a D tampering, and something else, right? So we call it alphabet soup when you got all the felonies, right? They took college out of prisons because there was a demographic of people or a set group of people that said we should not give free educations to criminals when we got to pay for education out here.
I wanted to hear about you, because not everybody does what you're doing. In fact, you're a rarity. You're unique in that regard. And that's what I really wanted to draw out of you. And so, I went from being a kid who, was working on a truck dock in 1975 to a $1 billion exit, 30, 40 years later. And I can't tell you how blessed I feel, how lucky I was. I go back to the old neighborhood. I stay connected. The kids I went to school with in elementary school and high school, I go back to Chicago all the time, and I see them there. And I care about them as much as, because they shape me. They help make me who I am, just like you. I mean, everybody you touch in your life has some impact on it, positive or negative, right? And you take the good stuff, you hope, and you leave the bad stuff behind. But, people have an impact on you. Even the bad shit happens, right? You're like, okay, I learned something from that. And I think you're the kind of guy, just listening to you, who have that attitude that no matter how shitty a situation might be, there's something positive to be gained from it. And you take that piece away and you leave all the other crapola behind. And so I'm so impressed with what you're doing and what you've done. I really want to dive into why you. I want to talk about you. I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it.
Me. It needs to be about you.
Well,
I'm sitting here learning everything.
Yeah, there's a little bit too much of that, though. I have this opportunity because I have this platform that I could literally do an hour podcast just talking about me, but people would get bored after a while.
For 7 days.
So yeah, I just wanted you to know who I am, and I'm here because I've had now the financial success that gave me the freedom, or gives me the freedom, to do whatever I want. And I want to pay it forward in ways that are meaningful and long-lasting. The legacy I want to leave is a body of work that says, hey, Don Peterson, in spite of his success, took the time, made the time to do something positive. Whether it's about entrepreneurship or not, it doesn't matter. I feel like I've lived the American dream in a way that I want others to know it can be done. No matter what your situation is as a young person, you get out. You can. It's possible. It's not easy, and it's easy to fall. I'm like I said, I go back to the old neighborhood and I see people that I went to school with, and they look 10 years older than me. Because life's hard, man. You know how it is in the inner. It's hard. Stress, all the lack of safety and security and all that plays on your body. It plays on your mind. You just age faster, I think. I really do. And so, your story resonates with me because I saw so many of my friends and contemporaries back in my day doing or living the life that you probably are similar to what you grew up in. And I'm also interested, though, because you probably have this perspective. If you don't, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, though. Is part of this podcast is trying to take younger generations who, for some reason, have this notion that life was a lot easier for me than it was or is for them. And I want to help young people understand it really isn't that different. Yes, there are different challenges, but there are still challenges. But especially with regard to entrepreneurship, it's a lot easier today to start a company than it was back in the 80s. A lot easier. Now, is it any easier to finish a company? Is it any easier to get it done and do it right and make some money doing it? No, I don't think so. I think it's just as hard as it ever has been. And actually, that's a good thing, because if it weren't, every knucklehead in the world would be doing stupid shit. And we wouldn't be building the kind of value and creating the kind of incentives that builds. But I think that for the purposes of this, I I want to know your story because you are unique in what you're doing. And I have a feeling that has a lot to do with you. And I want to hear about you. So
for sure.
Tell me, man.
For sure. I like that you led with unique though, right? Because a lot of times people see me and they're like, see, that's why everybody can make it out. He made it out, so everybody can make it out. But I'm an anomaly. Like I'm like I was designed to be like put here. My mom was is a licensed clinician. She ran the Amani House. It was just a treatment facility. My dad was a military brat, worked at Jackson County Jail all of his life, you know, not gonna say all of his life, but majority of his life. So I got my mom, high level education, high level thought process, always like working on like bettering your mental state and all that type of stuff. And then I got my dad over here on like super pragmatic, right? Like super analytical, process and procedure. That's his whole jam. Well, coming up in those two environments, when it came to like understanding how to create a system with the cognitive behavioral modification, it was kind of my jam, right? And I was that kid that was hooked on phonics and could read. Like that, my mom was like, in the summer we're going to do education. It doesn't matter. That's just who it is. But we're still in the middle of the hood. We still grew up, you know. And so my mom grew. Family is from the inner city, and my dad is from the country, Odessa, Missouri.
Okay.
So he moves into Raytown, Missouri. So there's a dichotomy there, you know. So just being able to transition back and forth, you know what I mean? That design is rare. You're all the way in the hood or you're in the hood and then you transition out of the hood, but going back and forth, that's not common.
Yeah.
So you know, but on the other side of how great it makes it made me, it also split my thought process in half, right? Now, growing up with my mom, majority of the males are from the hood, living this life, right? And then I got my dad that has all these rules in place that don't match where I'm from. So he's crazy. And everybody else that's in this neighborhood, because there's majority of them, they're right?
So when you talk about your dad, right? So he comes from coming from Odessa, he's got a whole different framework, right, that he's dealing with. Did you attach yourself to that thinking, or did you detach yourself?
My father's thinking?
Yeah. You wanted to
I
go...
detached it. I detached. I didn't think he understood. I didn't think he like saw me very clearly, right?
Yeah.
Because at first I stayed with my mom. I was with my mom majority of the time.
Yeah.
So even on weekends, months at a time, I'm with my mom. My dad would come. Well, you know, he's young, trying to figure out his life and all that stuff too. But as an adolescent, I don't know that. He just didn't show up, right? So I can't trust this man, right? So I got who am I looking for? So I'm looking at my uncles on my mom's side, and you know, the crack epidemic had wreaked havoc on my mom's side of the family. Also on my dad's side, but more so on my mom, we had a bigger family unit. And not knowing that this family unit is so toxic, you know, at that time, you think this is just normal, right?
It's
the
normal,
parties on the weekends and the back and forth and the family members staying with you or who's watching you and stuff like that. You think it's normal. And then for it not to be normal, you know, so it broke down. My mom's side of the family split up. So then it's me, my mom, my aunt, and then it's my dad, and their family is pretty small. So there's no real direction. You know, there's no source to pull from. And a lot of other demographics and a lot of other cultures is so family oriented, right, that you always have an outlet to look at or somebody to cover you and things like that. I'm not saying it's like that in every demographic, but predominantly.
No, I think that what you deal with, and I think a lot of young people in the inner city deal with, are the single parent homes or parentless homes where, you know, you're being raised by your grandmother or grandfather. Or
it's just the rate of it is higher. And a lot of times we hyper focus on that because it's like, oh, well, black fathers aren't there and stuff like that. There's so many, the nuance isn't true, right? It's not true, but we glorify and we amplify those stories, right? And we got to remember, blacks only make up to 18% of the population, right? So if you put a microscope on a diamond, you're going to find a crack if it's a real one, right? Anything you hyper focus on, you'll find the flaws. But by per capita, there's more people that are white on on welfare than it is.
Right. Yeah. We were talking
You know-
about
you know what I
poverty
mean?
in general.
Yeah,
right?
in general,
Yeah.
though,
In general,
right?
there are more white people
Exactly.
impoverished than there are black people.
Exactly, but we hyper focus
Right.
on this one because that's just kind of the been the American thing, right? For a little while.
Well,
But,
I think it is. I think it is an effort on the part of the hierarchy that
Mhm.
exists to try to correct the problem, right, and focus on, well, where can
Right.
we do the most good?
Right.
And the inner city is easy to identify as a problem area,
correct.
whereas the white impoverished communities are spread out across rural America as well.
Right.
Much more so than I think blacks. Blacks
Sure.
are more concentrated in inner cities.
Mhm.
And so it's an easier target
Right.
for some of these programs.
Right.
And I also think that there's personally think that there's a different balance sheet with regard to what do we owe white people versus what do we owe black people,
Mhm.
right? And so whether or not it's purposeful or intentional, I think it is always there. It's
Mhm.
always there. And so, the white guilt and the, whether we talk about, I think that if you look at political policies, they have dealt more so with the inner city than they have with the same conditions that exist in the rural market,
Mhm.
simply because there are more blacks in the inner city than there are
Correct.
blacks in the rural impoverished communities. Now,
Right.
that's not to say one is wrong or right. I mean, it's not a question of right or wrong. It's all good. Whatever is being done is all good.
Well, I don't know about all good. So reason I say my issue is like you can't solve a problem for a people that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So white poverty is not the same as black poverty,
No.
not the same as Asian poverty, not the same as,
Yeah.
but poverty is the same.
Yeah.
Right. It's how we solve it. So
It's only the metrics are the same, right?
The
You're
metrics,
using the same
right,
yardstick to measure them. You're
Exactly.
saying, yeah, you're you're
Exactly.
making 11,000 a year. You're going to have problems. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But I think the issue that sometimes we get caught up in is, so there's poverty, there's criminality, and there's violence. Right.
Yeah.
Remember all three different thought processes. So poverty was a financial state of being at one
Right.
point in time, right? But as America, continued to age, and when you have the same problem, what the issue is, people stop thinking about what the problem is, right? That the how I got here is no longer there, right?
Yeah.
It's not even a question, and that's a serious issue when we're not asking the question and we're just solving the problem, moving forward, right?
Well, that's what you said earlier about normalization,
It's
or
normalized.
normalizing these things. One of the videos on your website was with that young man, Kevin,
Mhm.
teenager, right?
Mhm.
And when he sought revenge
Mhm.
for the shooting of his
Mother.
parent,
Mhm.
right? He went and had the parent of the person who did the
Mhm.
shooting shot,
Mhm.
right? And I thought to myself, okay, so even as young as he is, the violence was normalized. It's
Mhm.
like, well, you did this to me, I get to do that to you.
Well, why is it any different than if you're in war, you would do the same
Exactly.
thing? You
But
know what I mean?
but you're not in war.
He is in war.
You're supposed to. Well, is he? I mean, I guess that's what I need to understand.
He is in war.
How? Tell me about that. I want to really know,
Mm.
because I see a young man who deserving of help,
Mhm.
and you'd want to help him, but if his attitude is, well, the only right thing for me to do is go shoot somebody.
Why is he any different than somebody else in Afghanistan or anywhere else that has somebody trying to kill him?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's
That's the thought. That's what
Is
I'm
that the
saying.
thought
Like
process?
criminality, violence, and it's a culture that people don't understand. And what happens is we put our thought processes on that reality, and we never experienced it. Like I wouldn't go to a doctor as a dentist, right, and tell the doctor, as the doctor's talking about my cholesterol, right, tell him how to do it. Like,
Yeah, right.
But we do that when it comes to people that are in these thought processes, these things. So what has to happen is you have to have somebody that, from that traumatized lifestyle, raise up and find a way to be articulate to code switch that conversation to the other cultures, right?
Yeah.
And then we have to learn how to do it in a way that doesn't make you feel less than, right? So you
Right.
can be open to the conversation, right? So we got to be teachable. You see how much code switching goes into just being able to tell you this is really what's happening in my life, right?
Yeah.
And that's so Kyle, what's different from Lyrics than any other organization that does a similar work that you do? Because cognitive behavioral modification isn't necessarily like I can't copyright cognitive behavioral modification. It's a modality.
Right,
It's a
been
thought,
around.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But what I can do is I can copyright how I deliver that modality. So I use the culture, right? And I don't only use the culture. I don't use Black culture. I use poverty culture to push this. So now I'm not serving Black people. I'm serving the Black, Asian, green, purple, blue, whatever, because the thought process is the same. And it's the same way when I'm talking about criminality and violence, though, right?
Let's talk about you, though. I want to get back to talking about you. Well, Kevin on your website is a good example, I think. And I think there's lessons to be learned there.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, he made a really bad choice of seeking revenge. Now, you can say, but that's what he would be expected to do in any culture.
Why
and
do
that
you
may be
consider
true.
it bad, though?
Well, shooting anybody, right, is against the law. So if it's against the law and you're doing it, it's probably a bad choice. If it's not against the law and you just go punch somebody in the nose and say, well, you harm me, I'm going to harm you.
What would you do if somebody was trying to kill you?
Oh, I'd shoot him back. No doubt.
So why is his decision wrong? So even legally, that would be correct. If somebody's actively trying to kill you,
well, no, but this was well after the fact. I mean,
it's not well after the fact. See, that's what I mean. You got pieces of a story and conceptualizing the truth. That's not true, though.
Well,
right?
then,
but you're not a bad person. This is what we do as humans, though, right?
Yeah.
So we take the shooters of the parade, right? And we put our realities on them and be like, how could you, in the middle of 1.2 million people, start shooting like that? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? But then once you hear the story, because we end up serving some of the kids that were around that situation, when you hear the story and you're like, it was still a stupid decision. So to say I understand something doesn't mean I have to agree with it. I'm just seeking understanding, right? But what we often do is we don't apply enough empathy to say, can I look at the perpetrator and say, how did you even get here, though, right? Because it's not normal for anybody to be able to kill somebody. That's an abnormal thought process, right? Yeah. So then not only is it abnormal to think about killing somebody or walking out killing somebody, you did it in front of a million people.
Right, yeah.
So what happens
like you're going to get away with it.
And you like, why do you think you could?
Yeah.
What it is that those young adults or those people come from families where it's been over and over and over. So now I'm desensitized to thinking, like this is the wrong thing, because if you take that same thought process and you drop it in Central America, right? Or you drop it in Mexico, or you drop it in again, it's like wherever you drop it in Africa or Europe or wherever, in a war-torn country, you would say that they're normal, right? The only reason that we're saying that they're abnormal is because of American standards and rules, which functionally work, though. I'm not disagreeing with that. But I'm just saying, like, sometimes we have to step outside of our own box, right, to be able to put our feet in somebody else's. So Kevin's situation, right?
Yeah.
Kevin, he mother was shot. Yes, there was a gap in time. But in the thought process of a person that is actively being pursued to be killed, you're never not actively pursued to be killed. So when I go to the grocery store and I see somebody in the same jersey or the same hoodie as that person, my mind goes into fight or flight mode. It doesn't even have to be that person. So my mind is actively believing, whether it's true or false, from that culture, from that thought process, like I'm always in danger. Yeah. So if you were always in danger, whether it's right or wrong, if you believed you were always in danger, you will always be on protective mode. So now I'm not saying, KJ or Kevin, hey, there's better solutions to this problem, because there are, but the reality is there isn't in his mind.
Right. Yeah, so, I think I can see that.
So let me real quick. So behavior modification is this, or neuroplasticity, right? This is the work that we do, neuroplasticity, rewriting the neurological pathways. Mm-hmm. So to break that down, I try to do this for my funders, right? Because everybody didn't go to school for it. So when you go through a traumatic situation, anything, you're going to create a solution to that problem. But when you're in hyper survival mode, you don't go back to think about how to resolve that problem, because you have multiple other problems that you got to find solutions to. Well, if you find a solution to that at Kevin's age, when he's 11, 12, right, going through his mom being shot, looking at her in the what's the name, you create that solution. If nobody comes in and lays another solution down, you're only going to use that one from here on out, right? So this is the problem with the way the restorative justice happens now, though, right? And it's changing, it's growing because people are understanding this, but we believe in rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is taking somebody back to what they originally were, right? But if he never had those other solutions, you're taking them back to the exact same thing, right?
You got to move him to a different place.
Right.
You can't
So
take
that's
him back
called,
to where he was.
Exactly. That's called habilitation, right?
Yeah.
Habilitation is taking somebody to something that they've never been before.
Yeah.
So we're gonna vilify this kid for not knowing, right? And then lock him up for 30 some odd years because he played in a game with other players that played the exact same game as him, right? And say, you know what? No, he shouldn't be in American society. Well, the issue is he never know how to play in the American society from the beginning.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That wasn't an option.
It wasn't an option. Mother has mental health issues. Dad was locked up in prison. He didn't have a chance. I'm not saying there shouldn't be consequences. I'm a firm believer. I've been to prison. There's some people that need to be in jail. You know what I mean? But at the exact same time, are we housing people? You know what I'm saying? Or are we trying to reintegrate people into society? And that's where a lot of times the nuance, it becomes a nuance when it comes to the people that we serve, or is this a villain or is it not a villain? Because I got a young boy that mom set him up to kill somebody.
Really?
And we would say, like on the news, we'd be like, oh, he's horrible, right?
Bad. Yeah.
But his mom put him in a situation, you know what I'm saying, to where he believed that he was protecting his mom. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what would you do if your arm was stuck between a boulder? You would chew it off to get free.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we don't do that when it comes to our inner cities and stuff like that. We don't think like that, right? Because we're detached from the problem.
So how do you create, at least for you, talk to me about how did you then recognize when you say, you know, like in Kevin's case, he didn't know there were other options. He only had the one. How did you, or when did you come to the conclusion that, you know what, there are better choices to be made? How did you? Tell me about you, because I can see you're just sort of the Kevin grown up, and you know, understand his thinking and why he thought that way. And you're right. If you don't know that there are other options, then that's the only option. How did you come to the conclusion that there were other options?
Man. So,
or at what point? I mean, maybe you can only identify the time at which it happened. Maybe.
No, I can identify the pathway. So, I graduated from high school homeless. Right. First time I was kicked out was the first time that I experienced that trauma of having to realize I got to provide for myself. Yeah. So with limited thinking, you would go to your natural resource, right? Right. So natural resource was marijuana and cocaine. That it was in the area. I can't get a place to stay working at McDonald's, but I'm only gonna get part-time anyway, right? What can I do as a 14-year-old young man, right? 14-year-old boy, to figure out a way to survive, because I know what it's like to sleep in a car. I know what it's like to be cold. I know I can't return to that. What do I need to do? So I created that thought process to go, in that direction. So what happens is my morality, because I came from a structured home with Christian values, high level morality, right? How would I go from two parents that they're not together, but actually have good upbringing? You would say that I shouldn't have went this direction, but how do I end up here though, right? It's the desensitization. When your reality doesn't match the reality, the house reality doesn't match your outside reality, there's a desensitization that begins to happen. There's a deterioration of the thought process. So now my parents are the minority and everybody else is the majority. And in my young mind, the majority is the ones that hold the rules though, right? Yeah. So I lived this life. I ended up getting kicked out. I graduated from high school homeless. I'm hustling on the corner, and my morals just continue to deteriorate because it doesn't make sense that my morals told me I should not sell crack to a pregnant woman. That was my morals, right?
I saw that video. Yeah.
Right.
It's a great story.
But if she keeps walking past me, and going to the next guy, like, I don't understand this though, right? Yeah. I was the guy that was nonviolent, never wanted to hurt anybody, but people kept picking on me because I was nonviolent. So then I realized by solving the problem, I need to use violence for people to stop picking on me. Well, the issue was I started using violence to solve all my problems because nobody taught me to not, right? Right. So now I have this this solidified thought process that's reinforced by real life examples, right? Social media tells me this truth. My music tells me this truth. My family, my community tells me that what I'm doing is true. This is real, right?
Yeah.
So I get caught in a car. I don't know if you probably heard this story too, but I get caught in a car with an assault rifle, right? A high capacity AK-47, 30 rounds on it in the backseat of a rental car. So my probation officer was like, oh, why? Like make this make sense why you got this high power gun. You could have a little gun and it would still do the exact same thing, but you got this big old gun. And I tell him, I'm saying, well, I wanted to go to this after hours. I wanted to feel protected. And he's like, Kyle, why would you go somewhere that you know you could die to go have fun?
Right.
And when he said it, it was like, all right, like maybe, but I'm not going to let him win. It's my probation officer, right?
Sure.
So I'm rambling on and on. He's like, Kyle, would you go into a bank knowingly being robbed? I'm like, nah, that's stupid. And he looks at me and he just crosses his arms, right? And he's like, So we're going on, and I'm telling this man, he's like, you're white, you don't understand my struggle, all the stuff. Victim's mentality at its finest, right? Yeah. But then he asks me, he says, Kyle, does your mom carry a gun? I'm like, no, she don't live the life that I live. And then he sits back and looks at me like, bro, you just don't get it. And I didn't really understand it then, but I knew that he knew something I didn't know, right? Yeah. It was something, but I just kept justifying he didn't understand me. He didn't understand my struggle. He didn't know where I was coming from, right? And later on, that's called superior uniqueness, inflating my own existence versus the rest of the world, right? Yeah. These are tactics and justifications that we use. So they sent me to, so he ended up vouching for me. So I had a Class A trafficking, a Class B trafficking, a C possession, a D tampering, and something else, right? So we call it alphabet soup when you got all the felonies, right? So I get the other ones dismissed and I get stuck with the Class A and the B trafficking. Well, they give me 10 years for the trafficking, but there's no drug remand because what they realized was that majority of people that sell drugs right now are really addicts, right? Yeah. And they're getting the exact same amount of time as these kingpins. So they took the remand off the mandate from the judge and gave it to the parole board to kind of make discretionary decisions based on their lifestyles. So they were like, Kyle, we believe that you should go to jail. And I'm like, I'm confused, right? Like, why I got to go to jail? But they were like, yo, we want you to go to this 4-month program because it's this cognitive behavioral modification. You're really intelligent. You're different from the people that come through here. I think this would be really good for you. So I go. And then I get introduced to these clinicians, and then they ask me the question. They're like, oh, who's worse, the drug dealer or the pedophile? And I'm in a room full of drug dealers, right? So we're like, oh, the pedophile, 100%, right? And we could see how that could be true. But then they were like, so how many victims does a pedophile have? Yeah. And then it was that moment, because I knew when they asked the question where it was going, but I tried to use my justifications to get out of it. And we were like, oh, 50 victims. And reality is it's like 7 to 12 or something like that, right? Before their first incarceration, they get called and stuff like that. But even if we inflate that number to 20, compared to my victimization to every time I sold a stone, every time I sold a bag of weed, or every time I sold a pill, like them are my victims, right? And if I sold it to them twice, then I re-victimized them. And I realized at that point I was the boogeyman. I was the problem, but I never would have known that I was the problem until I ran into this, right? So anything set in motion will stay in motion until it's met with equal or greater force. True. Yep. Even in our thought process, though, right? Oh, yeah. We need a big enough reinforcer to, one, open up my thought process, and then I also need the information to be able to come in to shift me. So that's what happened. I ended up going to the cognitive behavior program when I was in the state prison, but then my federal number changed, and I didn't know why. Come to find out, they were indicting me for conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine and 8 other charges that were 2-year investigation that happened before I even made it to prison. So they let it all stack up because the petty drug cases wasn't enough to lock me up for a long time. Yeah. Well, they were actually trying to put a crime lab on 27th and Prospect. So they were trying to clean the area up. And what I was doing was I had lived in the 50s. So they didn't do the big sweep there like they did in the 20s. Yeah. So I'm bringing back all the structure. I'm bringing back all the stuff that they had dismantled. I'm rebuilding, not knowing the bigger, not the objective view. And they're like, no. Oh, no. So they gave me a conspiracy on a case that really was a state case, but they wanted me to collapse the corner. They wanted me to tell on all these people, build it up so they could sweep the corner, put this crime lab there and start all over. It didn't happen like that, right? So I ended up taking the charge by myself. And that introduced me to the more intensive cognitive behavior modification, which was at Leavenworth USP.
Okay.
And that's where I took the 18-month program and realized like, oh, like we gotta shift this, right? My thought process. And then I call home and find out that my daughter is going through the same stuff that I'm going through, right? So my thought process went to, oh, I need to save her, right? So I'm gonna get all this information, I'm gonna save her. And then I'm walking down the run, walking down the what is it called, the track outside in the penitentiary, and I overheard two people talking, and it was this big guy that was complaining to this other guy that he couldn't kill his cellie, right? Like he couldn't get away with it, right? And he was whining to him, like whining. And I ain't never been so scared in my life, right? Like I've never heard somebody whine about not killing somebody, right? And then I realized, like, bro, I'm in a space where there's 1,100 people that are all stuck in this thought process, right? And I'm going through these courses and I'm realizing only thing different is it's just not culturally competent, right? It's telling us that we're crazy. We're not crazy for doing what we do. Like it's justified. It works because we've watched 30 other people do it for decades. So it works. It just doesn't work when you get caught, right? So what I ended up doing was just changing the model of how it was done. So I ended up teaching a class, and that class, they were only graduating about 12 out of 35. And I graduated like 32 out of it, right? So I realized I had a niche. And once I realized I had a niche and the cultural competency piece was the niche, then I kept studying, I kept doing everything. I ended up working for the program that I did. I took the lead position to figure out everything, like the bookkeeping, how to like basically run an organization. I learned it from there. Got shipped off to another place, ended up doing some more studying on the cognitive design. So Lyrik is a culmination of 4 cognitive behavior modifications summed up into one. I took the best pieces of it and wrapped it with cultural competencies. And then I got shipped to a low. Lows are where you'll find your white collar crime and stuff like that. So that's how I learned how to do the board governance and really run it from a more organizational standpoint. And got released in 2019. Been building Lyrik ever since. 2019 in February we LLC'd, and then in 2020 we got our nonprofit status. 2021 we launched. Okay, that's how we got here.
So, Kyle, it's an incredible story, and it's something obviously you should be very proud of, and you are, I'm sure, a great role model for a lot of other young men coming up like you did, and dealing with what you have. What the Lyrik Institute, so I understand that Lyrik is your daughter's name, right?
Yeah.
Do you have other children?
I do. I got 2 other ones. It's Truth and my son KJ, Kyle Jr.
Yeah. How old are they now?
She'll be 8 in March. She feels like she's 8 right now. She probably feels like she's 23, but she's 7. And then my son is 4.
Yeah. So how much of what you're doing today is driven by 1 or 2 or 3? It's a multiple choice question, I guess. The moral compass that you obviously always had, just didn't apply in some cases, right? How much is driven by that, or versus how much is driven by a sense of I owe the community something that I need to give back? Or 3, how much of it is driven by your family situation with your children now? And because I'm interested in what motivates you.
That's good.
And it'd be interesting to hear how you feel about that.
So D, all of the above.
I was thinking it was a little bit of all of the above.
All of the above. It's restorative justice for me. It's I took a lot. I was a horrible human being. You know what I mean? Like, to my standards, maybe not to my community standards, right? Because I fed people, and that community is like, we're here surviving. Like, that's what we do. But a lot of it is we're stuck in something that we don't even know we're stuck in. I love this philosophy. A man could be, you could set a man free, but until he walks through the door, he's not free, right? So the door to our freedom is wide open, and we hear it all the time. Oh, there's college, and there's these opportunities. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But if I don't know I got boots on, they don't exist.
I don't even know my boots had straps.
Yeah, And I just dedicated my life to just reminding all of us that we got straps on these boots, man. And the ruggedness of these boots that we wear, right? That sets us apart from everybody else. When somebody will jump out the window for their last $5,000, for $20, we're going to the store to go get some chips and we're going to figure out tomorrow, right? It's that type of resiliency is what makes some of the best executives in the world, right? Being able to see past the right now, dealing with what I got to deal with today to be able to see what I can do tomorrow, man.
Yeah, I think that actually resonates with my story quite a lot because that's what happened to me. And the same thing that happened to you in terms of people identifying you as unique, maybe uniquely capable of understanding the cognitive behavioral modification program that would lead to you making better choices. And if you were not identified as a person who could adapt to that or, internalize that, where would you be?
Stuck.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's the kind of quality or attribute you'd want all young people to recognize, is that no matter how crappy your situation, you are unique. You're special. And if you can demonstrate that uniqueness or that specialness, people will resonate to that. They'll take to that. If you're just like everybody else, doing what everybody else is doing for the same stupid reason that everybody else is doing it, you're not unique.
Right.
You're just the average Joe, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't stand out just a tiny bit,
right? You
don't
blend in too much.
You're just going to blend in. And a lot of people just want to blend in, right?
Exactly.
They don't want to be called out. They don't want to be, singled out for any particular reason. But I actually think that that's something that people should strive for.
Right.
It's get singled out.
Right.
Do something unique. Even if it's something stupid, just be unique. And
I think it has to be taught. You're absolutely correct. What I'm learning is, like, if you're not vulnerable and you're not accountable, you'll never be unique.
Yeah.
Right. Like you'll fit the mold, and that's one of the core competencies of what Lyrik is vulnerability and accountability. Right. Vulnerability, accountability, and resilience. And that's what we have to teach. We have to teach them to be able to say, yo, I'm flawed. Because by saying that you're flawed will allow me to correct you, and my correction is what will set you apart from everybody else, right? So now you can see yourself clearly. Where you thought you wasn't enough, now you see like, like I make bad decisions, but I'm not my bad decision. I can do that. So I think we really got to get into this place of saying, yo, sometimes people just don't know. And if we knew that the fire was hot, we wouldn't keep touching the fire, right? Yeah. But you keep seeing this able-bodied person and assuming that they should know better, right? But there's some small things that I think if I had to worry about where I was going to eat, I'm not going to worry about 1 + 1 = 2. You know what I'm saying? And we see people surviving, and we assume because that's the hardest thing to do is survive, that you should definitely be able to do these simple things, right? And when your mind is focused on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the lowest level, and that's all that you focused on, you don't care
about the ones above it, right? I get it. I
think
in my own case, I didn't apply myself in school because I didn't see it as a way out.
There you go.
It was like,
that's a lot of my younger
So what is it going to do for me? I could get straight A's maybe, but what's it going to do for me? I'm going to public school. No big college is going to take me. I'm not, I played sports for a while, but I was not tall enough to play football, but I, fast enough to do anything else. I'm too fat to wrestle. So there weren't a lot of choices. It was like, well, what am I going to do with my life? And, after high school, and I did so poorly in high school, I didn't have options. There weren't any options. It was go get a job and make money or do whatever to pay the bills, pay the rent. And my parents had no resources to send me to college or to pay for anything. And so if I was ever going to go, it was going to have to be. And so literally when I did start applying to colleges after 2 years at JUCO, I didn't care who accepted me. It was who was going to give me the largest scholarship. That's all it was about. I really didn't care. I'd go to school anywhere if I could get a little bit of financial assistance in going. And I think that
you're an anomaly.
Well, okay, so are you. I think it's what sets some people apart, and the degree to which you have it can set you apart even more so.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think that's what when I look at the problems that people have, I think about how do we educate them about what their real options are. What in reality could you choose to do if you weren't doing this? And
That's
there was a long
good.
time in my life where, as you would point out, violence was the way, right? I mean, I have 3 lower incisors because in a gang fight, I got hit with a chain. And that was the days before everybody had a gun, you know? So thank God. I'm sure glad I'd rather lose a tooth than lose my life.
Right.
But, you know, this is what it was. I mean, you're on your way to school. Who's going to pick a fight with you? You're on your way home from school. Who's going to pick a fight with you? My parents, they were like, you're going to leave at the last minute and you're going to go straight to school. No stopping, no hanging out. And on the way back, I expect you home 15 minutes after you get released from school. There's no hanging out. There's no, you know, looking for trouble, or because anywhere you go, you're going to find it.
You're going to find it, yeah.
And I'm sure that's very true in the hood as well. And so I think that it takes a bit of uniqueness, at whatever level, to get other people to recognize this person is worth working with.
Yeah.
You know, and I listen to all of this, and it's interesting that there's this attitude that meritocracy is not good, right? It's you know, but everything you just said is about achieving merit, right? Doing the things that people go, you know what, that Kyle guy, he's worth working with. That guy, you know, he's got a little bit different thinking than some of the people we see. He's willing to speak up even when he's wrong, and that's okay, because we can then recognize he has a cogent thought, and we can talk to him about maybe that's not the right thinking, right? Or why it's not the right thinking. But I think people struggle with that. I think young people struggle with that.
Definitely.
You know, they're trying to assert their uniqueness online. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody cares what you're posting on TikTok or LinkedIn or whatever the hell you're posting. You got to be you, man, amongst real people doing real stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Not these phantom fans of yours that are doing likes on your stupid post. You know, that's not life. That's a game you're playing, right? You can play that game all day long if you want to, if that's what turns you on. But if you want to get ahead in life, if you want to be better than your parents were, or achieve more than your peers are achieving, you've got to be a little bit unique. And so let's talk a little bit about Lyrik's Institute and the work you're doing and, well, the success you're having. Talk about that.
Man, we've been really blessed, man, really blessed. So again, we started in 2021. Went right. We had these events called Power Move. So, you know, we had to build up to so Lyrics. Sometimes people think Lyrics just came out in 2019. It took 10 years. That's 7.5 years.
I want you to go back to that though. What motivated you to go do this? Why did you think putting this together was a good idea? And how did you then gather the resources to put it together? It's like starting any other business. I mean, it takes a dream, it takes a vision, right?
I had to figure out how I was going to make some money. For real. I had
that's
to figure
all right.
it out. I'm a convener. My style of leadership is community driven. A lot of people can go farther. You know what I mean? That's just my motto. And that's how I hustled, though. I had to take what I did in the streets and figure out how to make money off of it. And I wanted to run a business and, be this executive, but I'm coming out of prison at 30 years old. I ain't about to be no executive of nobody's thing. And I still got to go to college and all this type of stuff. So while, when I was 20, I went in when I was 23, I asked myself the question, how am I going to make some money? What am I going to do? What's going to be my niche? I went to seminary when I was in prison. Man, I'm super blessed to have Midwestern. They 2 years before that, I think they just started going in. So being able to take that, and that's literally what cognitive behavioral modification is reworking the thought process. That's what my belief system believes. And I remember sitting at the table and I was like, I can't carry a gun anymore. I got to figure out how I'm going to survive now without carrying this gun. And when I was in St. Joe doing the 4-month program, there was a guy, he was leaning back in his chair and they just did not want to get it. They just did not want to get it. And I was like, what if I could understand why he put his hands in his hood and why he tilted in his chair, and I used that to get him to see the curriculum different. Now, it was just a moment that I just thought about that. And I was like, all right, cool, whatever. We're going to keep going. So I started writing when I was in Leavenworth. I was in CCA in the county. I started writing like lessons, right? And all I knew was I'm gonna teach this one day. Like I'm going to wake people up because there's no way my people know this. I couldn't know this, and I think I'm the smart one. My Enneagram says I believe I know the way. Right? That's my jam. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sell it, right? And honestly, I was going to use drug dealers' money because I know I had all of these connections. And I'm like, yo, I'm gonna wash your money for you. And then I get to the feds, like, oh, that's money laundering. Oh, I can't do that.
Well,
right?
Yeah, there's those laws.
There's
getting away a lot
somewhere
of good things.
Here, right? So I ended up getting to Leavenworth. And that's when, I took the second program and I changed my lens on it. And I was like, I read a book by Robert Greene called Mastery when I was in the county. And Mastery was all about absorbing information. How do you be the best mentee, right? How do you master something? And I treated Leavenworth like college.
Yeah.
Everything that I did, I learned why it was. Like in my one of my Dr. Sutton, the seminary teacher, he said, all of your mentors read their books. Read what they read. Figure out how they got there, and I apply that same philosophy to the programs that I were in. Like, how are you doing this? What is it? So I had this little, the crate that your paper comes in.
Yeah.
The case. I turned it into a file cabinet. I just start stacking it, and I just learned the structure. I learned the programmatic side, and just wanted to develop. And what I knew from just going through the course, right? Because everything I learned, I call her Yoda. It was a little white lady with gray hair. She was a Catholic, and it was like she was so starkly different from me, right? But she could read me like a book, and I wanted to know how she did that, right? So I would just poke at her all the time. I poked at all the other people, the directors and stuff like that. They thought I was annoying. Right, they was like, your dreams are too big. Your dreams are too big. Like, you're in prison. You need to have realistic dreams, because their fear was that you will return when you can't.
Right, when you fail.
Create, when you fail, right? Yeah. But I was just dead set. I knew I wasn't going back, and I just started building. And then once I figured out how they put the business structure to it, now I'm selling dope again. You know what I mean? Now, it was so funny. Right before I got locked up, my probation officer was like, you got to get a job. You got to get a job, or you're going to go to school. So I'm like, I can go to school and still sell weed, and I could do both at the same time. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So I did that, and he still got mad at me, found out about the whole thing, right? So he's like, you got to get a job. So I'm like, all right, I sell drugs, so I'll market. So I'm going to go into marketing, right? So I ended up working for this company called Validance, and it was a marketing agency. And it was the stupidest decision I ever made, because it's just no real money. Like, you got to actually sell it. It's on commission. I don't know how to do commission, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I need a 9-to-5, like a regular.
Yeah. I need a wage.
I need a wage, right?
Yeah, not a commission. I get you.
So what I learned was that they were teaching everything that I was doing for a living. Yeah. Like, literally, they had this one thing called the Jones effect, right? So what you would do is I'm selling Uverse, I'm selling AT&T stuff.
Yeah.
So I got to talk about John and them up the street that has the Bentley, and say, hey, John and them with the Bentley has AT&T Uverse. Like, you should have AT&T Uverse, right? And I'm sitting here like, that is definitely, hey, Sam up the street is high. Like, you see him slobbering and stuff like that. Like, I got that, right? That's the Jones effect, right?
Yeah, right.
And then I started looking at it like the way I ran my dope houses, and I would walk into Home Depot, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's the cashier. So that's the doorman, you know what I mean? And then security is the guy up the street. And then I'm like, yo, this is enterprise. I've been running enterprise, right?
Yeah.
So I just figured out how to turn what I already been doing into this, and I just studied. But I think what people fail to realize is, like, that'll only take you so far.
Yeah.
Right. Because now I got to code switch it into a language of business culture. Right. And I learned a lot of practical skills, but I didn't know how to articulate it into the culture. And so that was one of my biggest issues coming out. Just not speaking business culture language, right? Yeah. And not understanding why you didn't understand my language. We didn't go to the same college, right? And the American construct is built on this philosophy of, like, we all have to at least meet somewhere to be able to speak the same language so we can function. When you go home, you can say whatever you want to say, but when you come here, you have to function inside of this thing.
Yeah.
And what the gift that I have is everything I do is going to be innovative. right? I understand the principle, I understand the method. So I'm always going to see the paradigm from outside the box. Well, the problem with that is I don't know how to speak the language of the box, so I can't get nobody to fund me.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't get nobody to invest in my business plan because my business plan isn't introduction, body, conclusion. You know what I mean? My culture, we're storytellers, and I'll sit here and tell you a story all day and hope that you get my principle out of it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm probably even doing it in the podcast now, right?
No, and that's okay. I mean, I think that's, one of the things that our producer Jeremy likes to remind me of is that most of what I talk about is done in the form of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's getting older because now you do have an actual story to go with most lessons you learn in your life. Some are interesting, some are not.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't know the difference. Like I remember my mother, as she aged, she would tell me the same story over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, Mom, you just, all right, just let her tell the story. What the
Right.
hell? It's going to stop a 90-year-old woman from telling the story she loves to tell. And I think we do that. We have stories we like to tell, and we want to tell those stories. And I think in your case, listening to you talk, I'm understanding the story, but there's a lack of empathy, not sympathy or compassion, not that, because I'm compassionate and empathetic, I think. But what I can't do is put myself in your shoes, right? Now, I can talk about my own shoes and my own experiences, and it's similar or different. Somebody could dismiss them and say, well, nothing like that. Okay, well, maybe, I don't know, but that was my lived experience. So that's all I know.
Right.
And so when I listen to you talk, and you listen to you just now talking about, I knew and I understood the nature of the idea, but I wasn't sure how to articulate it to people who could help me back the idea. I think we all have that problem. I think many of us who think of ourselves as innovators, and like I said, I've started 3 companies. The hardest part of all of that is articulating to others whose support you want is, well, a compelling enough story to get them to want to do it, right? But, there's a book on economics by a French economist by the name of Thomas Piketty. It's called Capital in the 21st Century. It talks a lot about income inequality. And I think that Piketty in particular is against that. And he wants a global tax to kind of even out wealth and things like that, which I'm not sure I agree with. But regardless, it's a wonderful text, and you learn a lot from it. And that there's been cycles of income inequality across the ages, just depending on the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, and now the AI revolution. All of those things are occurring, and anybody who's on the leading edge of that is going to win faster and more than the people who are on the trailing edge. It's simple economics. I mean, you took the risk, you get the reward. Sorry. Everybody else was sitting back waiting for you to prove the model.
Exactly.
And you don't deserve the same reward. Sorry. And that's kind of what this whole book is about, except that one part of it that I found most interesting is it was actually a recipe as to how to become one of the 1%. And it's exactly what you were just talking about. It's going to people who have money and explaining your vision and what that means to them in terms of business upside or culture or whatever upside they're looking for, and getting them to give you the money to go do that so they can put their capital to work through your labor. Okay? Because the whole thesis is capital returns more than labor. So like in my case, I sold my company, I've got a pile of money. That money is earning more money now a year than I ever made in my life. I'm just sitting around watching it, doing nothing. Yet if I wanted to earn that kind of money every year, I'd have to work my ass off. I mean, and I did most of my life until just recently. That was my life. I was working 60, 80-hour weeks all the time. And so when this exit happened, it just changed everything for me because now I could put my capital to work instead of me. Right. And so now I'm just doing this or other things. And I think in your case, from what I'm seeing, is that you have that vision. You know what you want to do. You have an incarnation of it with the Lyrik Institute. And getting people behind you is really telling those stories that you're just telling me here. And I think, I'm glad you came because this is really what I wanted to get into is not so much, I mean, you could pitch the Lyrik Institute anytime, and you've done it. Your website's fantastic for that. I wanted to hear about you because not everybody does what you're doing. In fact, you're a rarity. You're unique in that regard. And that's what I really wanted to draw out of you. what struggles do you have with the Lyrik Center now? What are the obstacles, or what are the impediments, the speed bumps in your way now?
Mhm.
Do you want to expand what you're doing? Do you want to grow it? Do you want to have?
Finally, we can talk about the real stuff. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
let's get into that, because if
So-
people are listening to this who say, you know what, I love that story and I love what he's doing, you know, because you are articulate. So, you know, you're articulating the value and the sort of roadmap that you're trying to lay down for other young people who've gone through what you're going through or had gone through. And it's certainly a program worth hearing about and understanding.
Because it works.
And
It's
if
not,
it works,
it's not a question if
right.
it works. It's getting people to believe that it works and it needs to scale, right? So, I don't think we really realize some of the biases that we really have, though, right? And we're so used to these systems, and systems are people, because people operate the systems, but sometimes the systems are so safe that we get kind of like bottlenecked into the system. And when we're dealing with violence, that's what I do. I deal with violence. Violence is an organism. It's growing. It's smart. It develops itself. It's a virus. You know what I'm saying? And what happened is violence figured out how to market itself very, very well. And we're behind the curve when we're marketing the solution to violence. We're way behind the model. And then you're coming in to say this new way of doing it, you know, needs to be done. It needs to be done expeditiously, though, right?
Yeah.
But the systems are already put in place to run it this way because it's safe. There's so many jobs that are connected to the way the system runs right now that if I do eliminate these 3 steps, then it's going to go bad. So how do I create safety, right?
Right. But that's what makes you an innovator. Because these are innovative solutions. Because
Right,
what you're saying is the status quo isn't going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. Just can't.
But remember who's giving the innovative solutions. So again, I didn't go to college. I'm self-taught, right? And I'm really not self-taught. I really learned it the same way. But the way that the education system is set up in America is set up as A plus B equals C.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that because it's easier that way. Like the way I look at college is some people make some mistakes, right? And they figure out how to come up with a solution and they put all those solutions into a course, right? And then we teach the course and then we just keep editing the solution as time goes on, though, right? Soft science. So now that I didn't learn it from the same modality as you, I'm on the outside looking in with all these great innovative ideas. But sir, you have no credentials behind your name. Sir, you were a prisoner, sir. And people are like, no, it's not like that. Let me be very clear. They took college out of prisons because there was a demographic of people or a set group of people that said, we should not give free educations to criminals when we got to pay for education out here, right? On our own. We got to struggle to get an education. Why are we giving it to people that made bad decisions? That is a logical explanation when it's not an empathy conversation, right?
Right.
You're talking about people that don't know to get an opportunity. Like, we want them to come back and not rob you, ma'am. Right. So please educate them, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. So ChatGPT, AI is my best friend, right?
Yeah.
If you put something in the chat and you don't know what it is, chat's going to create it for you, though, right? But as somebody that works with chat, I know chat when you don't know what you're talking about, right? But the more you know about your program or know about the heartbeat of what you're doing, you can actually make chat really, really work for you.
Oh, yeah.
So what I do is I use it to code switch. I don't know what it's like to create this 10-point business plan that this person that the bank will want, right? I just know how to get here, right? And what happens is we have these roundtable discussions about what we should do with violence, right? And we keep having them and having them and having them because we don't have people that come from violence, the violent ideation at the table. So we got to get as close as we can and keep bringing people to the table. Well, we keep having roundtable discussions about things that we already know in the culture. We already know this works. I don't got to keep having meeting after meeting after meeting. But the issue is we can't articulate it, right? Because when we go to, let's take the George Floyd thing, right? Both sides of the party. You know what I hated was when they would put a camera and a microphone in the face of somebody that was angry, right? They're not going to be rational. Right? It's not going to make any sense, right? But that's when we always want to solve the problem in the wake of the problem. We never go back and reevaluate it afterwards, right? Or before it or anything like that when the people are calm and can articulate it. So what chat does for me is it articulates it. You know what else articulates it? My accounting. Now, fiscally, I have to prove to you that I can manage $1.2 million a year, or I can manage, like, the building that we're going after is $28 million. But when I walk in, and I'm going to walk in my hoodie and my jeans on, you're going to be like, I wonder if he knows how to work a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Right? And they're not going to ask me that. They're going to be like, so do you have an organizational chart? There's no way I can manage $1 million and have 5 sat with no organizational chart. Like, you're asking rudimentary questions that's now letting me know you don't see me very clearly, though,
Yeah.
right? You don't see the work very clearly. So how do I articulate that? And what I learned was, and if I would have went to business school, I would have understood that you have your accounting story that you have to tell. You have to tell your narrative story that you have to tell. You have to tell your business strategy story. You got your strategic plan story. You got to have there's all of these things that I don't even know exist. I just know what works, right?
Yeah.
So what I have to do is, and I'm blessed. I've been super, super blessed. Like the Reach Foundation, they've put an accounting firm with me. They've put board development and all of these things with me, where I just want to do the work. And that's what the problem with a lot of smaller organizations is right now. They're all passion, no paperwork.
Yeah.
They just want to do the work.
Oh, I've had that experience. I've had, young people come to me asking for money to fund their business, and
it's not developed.
It's not a business.
It's not a business.
It's an idea.
It's a hobby.
It's an idea. I mean, you put nothing at risk. You still got your day job.
Yeah.
It's just something you'd like to go do. Okay, well, there's a lot of things I'd like to go do, and I'm probably not going to go do them all.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that there's no merit in what you want to do, but there is a process. And if you can't follow the process, then you're not going to get very far down the road.
Exactly.
I mean, it's kind of like, I want to drive my car to St. Louis. Okay, well, you're going to have to buy some gas.
Exactly.
You ain't going to get there without it.
You said it earlier, like the point of it being hard as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah,
you said getting in is easier, but it's still hard. And you said it needed to be hard. That's why I am where I am, right? So philanthropy is changing the way that they give out grants, right? It's more trust-based philanthropy.
Yes.
Phenomenal. But it can also make you weak, right? Because
I think there's, if I may, and I don't mean to be critical, but I think that your donor-based funding has already got fundamental weaknesses to it, because mostly because if you are challenged for capital and you have to keep going back to donors to get money, that keeps you from doing the thing that you're really good at doing, and that's working with the people who actually need Lyrik's help.
Correct.
And so
that's good.
It's like a CEO of a company who is their vision leader, their best sales guy, their best operations guy, spending all of his time raising money. Like, well, okay, you got it. It's a means to an end, but it's not the end in itself.
Exactly.
And same for you. You got to go raise money. And I used to be I was chairman of the board, I think, at the time, of an organization here in the 90s called the Silicon Prairie Technology Association. So I had moved here from Silicon Valley, and people thought I knew something that other people wouldn't know. And I had probably had a unique perspective on things because I did work out there. And it's very different than here in the high-tech community. And yet, at some point, the Kansas City Area Development Council wanted to euthanize that organization because instead of them getting phone calls about, hey, should I move my company to Kansas City, Silicon Prairie was getting those phone calls. Why? Because we were a membership-based organization with almost every technology-based company in the city as our member. So we really had our finger on the pulse of what was really going on, where not everybody was a member of the KCADC or a member of the chamber. Just weren't. Like my small business wouldn't be. And so the Kauffman Foundation got together with the KCADC and literally euthanized the Silicon Prairie Technology Association, took it over, put a guy that I knew on top of that organization. Nice guy, great guy, good manager, good guy. But I had lunch with him, and I said, the problem, David, that you have now is that instead of having 200 constituents, you have one, the guy who's giving you money. And if you're spending your time wondering, is that guy going to fund me? Is that guy going to give me the money? Is that guy going to be there for me? You're not doing what you need to be doing for the other 200 members that are no longer paying dues and are not going to be as involved as they were before. Because why? They have no skin in the game.
Right.
They have no skin in the game. If you fail, so what? If you succeed, okay, so what? Because I don't have to write a check to you every year.
Right. Yeah.
Whether it's $5,000 or $50,000, right?
That's so true.
And so I look at your situation and I'm thinking to myself, how does Kyle sustain this? How does he grow it? And I believe in what you're doing. I think most people who would listen to your story would believe in what you're doing. The question is, how do you sustain it? And That's why I'm asking, what are the speed bumps that are in your way? What are the challenges that you're facing? And is there solutions that you have in mind?
Yeah.
And what are they?
So going, you say so much and I'll be locked in. I really just want to like you're up here with it and I love it. So about that trust-based philanthropy, right? Building on what you're saying and having multiple streamlines of income. With trust-based philanthropy, and I got to say this because I think this is going to go somewhere and I don't want my donors to ever think that trust-based philanthropy is wrong.
Yeah.
But what I am going to say is when I came in the game, Kauffman was my first grant.
Of course.
It was my first opportunity. You really don't get into Kauffman unless you know somebody that knows somebody, right? Yeah. And I got blessed to get in, but that application was tough. It was the hardest thing, and I had to keep going back and forth, and I had a grant officer walking me through it, right? He was like, you need to structure your narrative and tell your story a little bit better and tell it more concise and get your budget and stuff like that. So my very first time, I had the hardest application. Every other application, like after that, I built off of that one application, right? Because I knew what to do from here on out.
Sure.
And it taught me when I got a grant writer what to expect from my grant writer, though, right? Well, again, not philanthropy, but our nonprofits are all passion, no paperwork, right? By going straight to trust-based philanthropy without the development piece, it can stagnate the growth and the scalability of it, right? But on the other side of that, and this is why trust-based philanthropy is so important, because then you're trusting me with the narrative of how I'm going to spend the money instead of you creating how I should spend the money based on your roundtable discussions that, like, I know how to do this, right?
Yeah.
I may not know how to do the accounting, but I definitely know how to save this child that's right in front of me now, right? Because I've been saving them when I didn't have any money. Now give me some money so I can scale. So that was one thing, right? So our donors are a portion of it, but I'm coming from prison, right? With those guys, they was like, yo, this is still a business. It's nonprofit, but what you give away costs money. Yeah. So I'm into making mechanisms, right? I need a bunch of small machines to run the bigger machine. So the contracting route. So what I decided to do was I'm gonna get this I call it a front seed money. I'm gonna get this grant money, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dump money into development of the program, but then I'm also gonna dump money into data, right? Because what I found out was philanthropy at a point in time, and I'm really dumbing this down to super fine dust. They say we want you to make sure that you have access to education, resources, and a community, right? Or and jobs, right? Well, Jeffrey Dahmer had all of those, and Jeffrey Dahmer's Jeffrey Dahmer, right? So we can't qualify that as success, though, right?
Yeah.
But what are we going to qualify? So when I put in my narratives and I'm losing these bids on these grants and stuff like that, we're like, so what's the problem? Well, none of your data is best practice.
Yeah.
None of your data is. So I started collecting data. I knew I needed to collect data. I started collecting it in 2021 when we launched our first program, right? And I got annual reports all the way through. But when I submit them, my counterparts who I'm getting contracts through, they're getting the bigger contract, right? And they're using my data and my cultural competency and my access to the culture to get to check these boxes to get a larger amount of money than me, right? Mm. Why? Because they got best practices. They speak the data language, right? So what I did was I'm like, I don't need nobody to tell us. Let's go get our own data set and let's build our own, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we can become best practice. So how does the university become the university, right? Data for a long period of time, collected with proven success records, tracked over a long period of time, speaking the culture, the business culture's language, will give you best practice. So that's what we're going to do, right? Okay. So what we did was we took a large lump sum of money and got with UMKC. We switched from a national organization to a local organization because they could understand the problems of the climate. And we started recreating the data sets. Now the ACEs test is, it determines your like what type of struggles that you're going through, right? We need to put you on a scale. Well, the issue with that is from our culture is we live by what happens in the house stays in the house. So if you give me an ACEs test that asks is my mom or anybody in my household using drugs or violent or something like that, you're going to get a bunch of no's. The ACEs scores are going to be low, right? Yeah. because the culture of criminality and poverty is high level manipulative, right?
Yep.
So a kid that will answer that correctly, that's a different type of kid.
Right.
They're not going to be the ones that are going to do the most harm, right?
Yeah.
It's the kids that are going to do the most harm that's going to lie.
Going to lie.
So
right.
what we realized was we would give the aces the first time, build relationship with them and give it to them again, and the scores would be different. But we also realized the language of the test needs to look different. The room needs to look different, because the same room that we go in is the same room that looks like the room that took my mama away from me, right? The same language, the same way you wear your ID badge, all of these things, these variables had to change so we could actually get a quality answer. But it also looked like that in our program, and it also looked like that in our data. So we went after these data sets, and now we have these workbooks. Now we have these systems to say, when we ask for $100,000+, we're not just asking for, no, it works, right? Here's our data. Here's our kids. Here's our success stories. Here's the micro things. So we got 3 kids with guns on them because they carry guns inside of our classrooms, outside of the schools. They'll bring them in because what we believe is you got to get here and you got to leave, right? And we know that
you still got to get home.
You still got to get home, right? But we understand gang culture and criminality culture so well that we know the power of the alpha in the room, right? And we know the power of wraparound services. And when you need me to solve some problems, you're going to respect me a little bit different, right? And that's how it is when, one, you care about me, you're consistent, the relationship is built, and you helping me, like really, and you're consistently helping me, bro, and I can make a mistake and you're still here. Nah, I'm not. That's our culture. We're not going to screw nobody over like that. Not that close to us though, right? So all of those data points matter. Long story short, we use those new data sets to get those contracts for $100,000+. So our contracts is where we want to get our sustainable income from, right? So now we want to partner with the school districts. Now we want to say we're best practice. Like, we do restorative justice differently and completely differently than anybody else. Here's our data, pay this amount of money. So now that becomes our seed money. That now when we go into these conversations, we always can say we got skin in the game. We don't have to say, oh, we got 13 donors saying that they're going to give us this money. No. We have our own money, right? So that's one aspect. And then we have our, foundation and donors are different though, right? So then we're developing our private donors, right? The personal relationships. Our next goal is to build up our trust, our annual trust, to start going into the businesses and saying, yo, it costs $1.2 million for every homicide that happens, right? So if we deter one person, that is $1.2 million that's fluctuated back into the economy, right? So these young adults that are shifting these thought processes are going into workforce, right? We're building marketers. We're building sound engineers, recording engineers. We're building all these people. You're gonna need these people to support you, right? So then now our conversation moves from help the little kids in poverty and struggle into, yo, this is an economic solution problem. You know what I mean? So now we're building up our trust with our businesses, right? And saying, yo, if you're gonna dump your money into something, dump it into us. So on the back end you can win instead of you just dumping it into something because you got a heartstring value to it.
Or it's a checkbox, right? So
it's a
you
checkbox.
Have a community obligation. I check the box.
Exactly.
I write them a check
but let it make money for you. Though. Like it doesn't. Like we still live in a capitalistic society. Make it make sense. You know what I mean? I have no problem with that. I think it serves the kids.
I think it's cool though that you recognize that, because I think a lot of people out there applying for grants somehow think of them as entitlements. No, you're competing for them just like you're competing for venture capital dollars or angel investor dollars or anything else. I mean, you just don't get it. Right? You just got to work your ass off for it. And if you're not working your ass off for it, well, then frankly, you don't deserve it.
You don't deserve it. And that's the 3 tiers that I've identified in philanthropy, or not even in philanthropy, more on the programmatic side. You got people that want to give away backpacks, and those are the high level passion. You know, just give me 20,000, give me 50,000, man, and let me serve my community, right? They don't care about it all, right? And then there's that middle group, right? And that middle group is the one that feels like we're fighting each other, right? And then you got your conglomerates, United Ways and all of them, right? They know this is collaborative work. I'm not about to do every position in this, right? And then like we fight to get here. Like everybody wants to get to that conglomerate level so we can serve all of these people and do all of this stuff, but we get stuck here because we don't know how to collaborate, right? We don't know how to work together and get this stuff off the ground. So what in that landscape, right, I'm realizing that those billions of dollars and all that type of stuff, you have to have that structure. You have to have these processes and these procedures, and they have to be worked out, and they have to be worked out in a corporate way for sustainability and scalability, though, right? And those three buckets has really just changed the way that I look at how I do business and how I partner in business, though, right? So all of those are models, though, right? But what I'm transitioning into is Lyriks has to be the convener. So I've been looking a lot into this DAO, right? Like convening a lot of business dollars, and how do we use these dollars and become a pathway to smaller organizations that will never get the opportunity, that don't care, right? So what Lyriks wants to do is we believe in a holistic approach. So we not only to help the kids, we have to help the parents, right? And help the community, right? It has to be this holistic approach. Well, how do we economically impact the community? So when I got somebody that says, yo, Kyle, I would love to come in and pour into these kids all of my life, bro, but I got bills, right? Sure. Then it made me look at my community partners that are small, and like, you're working a full-time job and trying to serve, you're burning yourself out. Like there's no way you're giving these kids everything that you can. And if you're saving them with a job and burnout, imagine what you could do if you had it, right? So what's stopping you from getting it? The paperwork, the pre and the post test, the MOUs, the everything that I've already been through. Why not just give it to them, though, right? Right. So creating that DAO with these businesses will not only, and here's another piece. And this sometimes grinds my gears. We get these supports from these foundations to do, like, strengthen your core competencies, strengthen your board, strengthen all of that. But I'm an executive director trying to figure out how to raise money to scale this thing. I don't got time to sit in a class. How about you? Can you do this for me? I understand you want to teach it, but, like, can you do this for me, or give me the money so I can go hire somebody that knows how to do it, get it done, right? Because I can't keep washing the floors and building relationships. I just can't keep doing that. I'm burning out, though, right? Right. And the issue with that is, so it takes about 5 years in philanthropy for them to trust you with a large, substantial amount of money. You have to check all of these boxes. That's cool if I was a daycare, right? Because there's 11,000 daycares all across the nation, all across Kansas City, though, right? Yeah. There's no other organization that hyper focuses on violence from 13 to 25. Chief Graves has stated that 16 to 22 is the focused area of skin to bullet shootings and homicides. It is that age group. There is no core, what do they call us? They call us CIs. They call us credible messengers. There's 2 organizations, 3 now that are strengthening. There's 3 organizations that have credible messengers, people that have with lived experience that could do this work, though, right? 2 of those organizations are not government funded, are government, somewhat government funded, right? But are not under the bureaucracy of the government. So it means we can move. So like an
NGO and not government. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. And with that, because of that, we have more cultural relevancy, because, again, we got to remember, if it smells like feds, tastes like state, it's state. It ain't even got to be it, right? Yeah. So we have to maintain that brand awareness, though, right? But majority of the dollars goes to the state. You see what I'm saying? And they'll go to those credible messengers first. So what we run into is, how do we fund and how do we get these off the ground to where they're the most front-facing, most important things? And honestly, I'm gonna be all the way real with you. Like, I had to do some kicking and screaming, right? Like, I had to rub people the wrong way. And right now I'm going back to, like, can we be friends again? Like, I just want to be your friend, right? But you can't tell me that you raised $2-some million, in 4 weeks for the parade to solve this problem because it's new. Be like, oh my God, it's spilled over into your community, and say, yo, I care and I love, and I've learned you do care and you love. I get it. I do understand that you want this stuff to stop, right? But yo, you can't solve our problem, right? Yeah. And because you don't have all of these organizations, you can't wait 5 years. You got to take the risk. You got to take a calculated risk. I'm not asking you to say, Lyriks, I'm gonna give you $1.2 million, but I ain't never seen you use a spreadsheet before. I ain't never seen a budget from you before, right? Yeah. Nah, look at my budget, see where the deficits are, right? But are those deficits in my budget really connected to fiscal responsibility, or is it he doesn't really know how to articulate his budget, though, right? Yeah. So with the Kemper Foundation, through the Commerce, they got me some money to get like a HR and all this type of stuff, the accounting and donor retention, to strengthen that though.
Oh, good. Okay.
Which is perfect though, right?
Yeah.
The issue is I'm built different, right? That's not the norm. Yeah. I come from a high level of resiliency, right? A lot of these organizations are like, I'm down bad, I'm out, I'm not going to keep striving. What's the point of keep going? Like, a prime example, we got $300,000 from the city of Kansas City through Raina Park Shaw's $30 million fund, right? Okay. Well, it was on accrual, right? So you had to spend the money to get the money.
Yeah.
We only had $30,000. Like, how am I going to rob Peter to pay Paul and do all of this type of stuff though, right? So that's what I mean. Like, there has to be a level of calculated risk when it comes to these smaller organizations, with the ability to say, yo, we're going to trust-based philanthropy, but we also want to strengthen you. Who wants to do all of that? I just want to save the people though. You know what I mean?
Let me ask you a question. Maybe we can, maybe I can understand better. Mm-hmm. What if there was one organization, just say one, whether it's local, national, doesn't matter, that would be the ideal partner for you, who would it be? Is there one? I mean, it's possible there's not, but is there one that you think about when you're laying there at night going, if I could just crack open that door?
Man, that's a good question. I'm sad that I don't have an answer for that.
That's okay. It's just something that if I were in your shoes is,
who can I go after? Who's
well,
that person?
it's the old question that investors typically ask founders. What keeps you up at night? And if I was putting money together to build an organization, and I was raising it from, individuals, didn't matter. It doesn't matter who I'm raising it from. What would keep me up at night is, how much money do I really need on a regular basis to get me home? To get me doing what I need to be doing, the way I want to be doing it, for the folks I want to be doing it for.
That's good.
Right?
I never just put my eggs in one basket.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting that there's one basket.
That was my thought process, though, was like, well, I came in this thinking like I love that philosophy. Like, who could I crack, right? I love that is phenomenal.
Well, because if you can't crack the biggest one,
then
maybe
I won't
you
be
can
able
crack
to,
the three ones below them, right? I mean, I used to tell my salespeople at my last company, if you can't get into the world's biggest hospitals, then go to the smaller ones around them. And when you get the smaller ones around them, the big hospital is going to say, well, how come they got that and we don't?
That's my model. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you wouldn't answer the door. You wouldn't answer the call. I remember having a conversation with my business development person in California, and she had been trying for months to get us a contract with Aetna, the big insurance company out there, because we did medical services, and we need to have contracts in order to get reimbursed for the service. And we couldn't get anybody to even get on the phone with us. I mean, they just totally ghosted us. So my business development person, she's a runner. She's doing a marathon over the weekend. She's running next to a lady. They're going about the same pace, so they start talking. Well, what do you do? Oh, I'm the business development person for Infusion Express, which was my company. Oh, what do you do? Oh, I'm the vice president of networks for Aetna. And Ellen says to her, we need to talk. We've been trying to get you guys a contract with you guys for months. And, and so the lady from Aetna said, well, what do you do? And so Ellen explained to her. And when she got done explaining what we did, the lady from Aetna's like, we need companies like yours. We want companies where have you been? She said, well, we've been knocking on your front door. And you know what she said? Oh, nobody answers the front door.
That's so good. It's so true.
Nobody answers the front door, man.
That is so
and
good.
So, within the next week, we had a conference call with their principal people, including the CEO of the West Coast Aetna region. And within a month, we had a contract. And all it took was for my person to go on a marathon run with the right, and it just happened to be next to the right person. And sometimes it's that random, it's that serendipitous. But most of the time it's not, right?
Right.
And I chided Ellen later. I said, how come you didn't know she existed? You can go on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think about the generational differences between us. And, when I was coming up in the 80s, there was no LinkedIn.
Right.
You couldn't go online and just figure out who, was in
definitely
charge of the thing you wanted to talk to. Now, well, hell, you can find anybody, right?
Yeah, when this email came in from here, I instantly LinkedIn. Who is this guy?
You're not more than 2 to 3 degrees of separation. You're a LinkedIn degree of separation away from just about anybody you want to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask you the question, it isn't that I'm thinking, okay, Kyle has an organization in his mind, but what type of organization? What would it take to get into that organization? And if you can get into that one, then you can get into all the other ones around it, because all the other smaller ones want to be like the big guy, because everybody wants to be like the big guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if there was a way to crack open the door at even the biggest organization, whether they said yes or no to you, doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to so-and-so. We've talked to so-and-so.
I really wanted to crack, and I'm realizing, I don't know if I should be hyper-focused on them, but like, I really wanted Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Kaufman was the one, not because they are just and this is just me going off the clip, right?
Yeah, no worries.
It was Kaufman because when it comes to philanthropy in the city, Kaufman's the heartbeat, right?
Yeah.
And if you get Kaufman, if Kaufman says yes, it's a yes. You know what I mean? It's a big yes everywhere, though.
It's a big
yes.
What I mean? And everybody down the table is going to go, who?
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, Kaufman. Oh.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Because
if they're in, then we would be in, right?
Exactly.
Because they're going to do, like you said, the application is amazing, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you can get over that gauntlet, get over that hurdle, then everybody down the table is going to go, well, if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for us, right?
So I just wanted them to believe. And, when we had kind of got shot down with Kaufman, but there was a lot of transition going on there, so I understand. But it changed my thought process to saying, like, I need buckets. You know what I mean? And that's kind of why I got away from it. But it's definitely a good idea to think like that, because it even has me thinking. So there's different components, right? So there's a programmatic side, and now we're going after the center, this $28 million, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I need to crack Sutherland. If I crack Sutherland, then Jay Dunn will get on board, and or Jay Dunn, whoever comes first, and it makes it linear, right?
Yeah.
And it like seeing, and that's big for me, even with Inception. Like, if I can see it, I can begin to start figuring out ways to manifest it, though, right?
Well,
so I love.
I can see that in you, because
I
I think in some respects you're the visionary that your community needs. You need somebody to show them the way, and you're laying down this path, as you call it, right? And so, look, and I think you're the kind of guy that if you figured out that you put a paving stone in the wrong place, you just go pick it up and move it to the right place, because you've been through enough challenges to know that the fallacy of sunk cost is a fallacy.
Right.
So if I'm going down this path and it's not paying off, I'm going to go find another path.
Yeah,
because I'm not going to settle for it's not going to pay off. Exactly. It's not good enough for me.
Yep.
Failure's not acceptable. Failure's not something I'm going to live with. So if I don't go get that rock and move it and start down a different path, what am I saying? I'm giving up.
Exactly.
I can't give up. Right?
That's it. I'm not that guy.
You're not that guy. And so, again, your attitude about all of this comes across in a very articulate way. So forget college and forget the lack of business school training. I mean, I didn't finish college. I don't have an MBA. I don't, I mean, AMD, when they hired me back in 1980 to go work in the semiconductor industry and moved me to California and really made my life in terms of choices much better. I was the first salesperson they ever hired who didn't have an electrical engineering degree. And people ask, well, why would they hire you then? They liked me. I don't know. There was something else about me that they said, okay, you're
unique.
We need you. We need you. Yeah. And I probably had one of the most successful careers of anybody who started in the sales ranks at AMD, of any of them. And but I worked my ass off. I mean, it wasn't because I was lucky. There was some luck associated to it. But if I didn't work hard and establish my unique capabilities, I would not have grown in the way that I did.
So talent can only take you so far if you don't execute.
That's right. That's right.
You're
You
gonna
have to deliver at some point. It's
I know
not,
people with no talent that execute very well, and they're way farther than. Are you going to get the job done? Are you going to do what you said you were going to do?
Well, I know a lot of smart people who never get the job done.
I know, right?
And they don't get the job done. They don't go anywhere, right? And they're struggling all their lives because they don't deliver. And that's really what you have to do.
Why I got where I am is they didn't believe, right? And when they didn't believe, I'm still going to execute.
Yeah.
So people are like, "Oh, why should we trust you? Like, why should we trust you with this vision, right?" And like you have these barriers. It's because there's no doors. There's no doors that won't get bulldozed for me, right? Like I have to figure this out. This is my life work. You know what I mean? This is who I am. I'm learning, and I'm the type of guy that has to learn work-life separation, and that's the guy that you want. You know what I mean?
Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, he was on LinkedIn the other day, and he had this little video, and he said, if your spouse or your partner is complaining that you as an entrepreneur who are trying to build something of lasting value in a big way, if she or he is complaining about you spending too much time at work, you're with the wrong person. Seriously, let's go find another partner. Yeah. Because this is what it takes.
This is what it takes.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
You signed up for this. You knew who you married, or you knew who you were hanging out with. If you didn't appreciate that Kyle was going to have the balance that he has, where it's going to be 80-20, not 50-50.
Yeah.
Then you're with the wrong person.
You're with the wrong person, man. My mentor, I got back from Florida, and it was just crazy. As soon as I got back, the flight was delayed, and I had to go speak at this graduation. I had to go teach. I had this whole day, and I'm just complaining to my mentor, older white man, used to be the president at Tippins, and he's like, he just sat there like he was confused, like.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want me to say to you? You want me to be like, you're an entrepreneur, bro. Like, get with it. And it was the humble. At first, I'm mad, but I'm like, you're so true. I pray for this.
Yeah.
I cry for this. I've been grinding to have these type of problems. You know what I mean? So I need to accept it.
These are problems that you earned.
I earned, right.
Yeah.
And
embrace it.
right. And I think that's what I try to lead with in my conversations, especially with my donors and my and like the people that we do contract to school boards and stuff like that. Like when we sign that MOU, I'm going to execute that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to execute that because I know that you're a part of the journey to get where I'm going, and I don't need you telling somebody else. Kyle Hollins didn't execute. Lyrics didn't execute. They didn't deliver, right? Yep. Now, you can say we delivered and it wasn't as good as what we thought. I'm going to take your feedback and credibility all day. I love data. You know what I mean? It ain't just for you. It's for me too.
Right. Yeah.
But we're going to get done. We're going to get to the end of this thing, right? And that's something that I want to say to my future partners too, though, right? Like, the question isn't does the program work? The question is, are we going to scale it? Are we going to serve 10 people, or are we going to serve a population of people that are really struggling, right? And to serve a population, you're going to have some grit. You're going to have some tenacity. You're going to have some innovative ideas, and all of that. And you know this is as well as I know in the entrepreneurial world. If you're innovative and you're a disruptor, you're going to have a lot of problems on your way, on your journey.
I can tell you, the thing that we did in this last company that we just sold for over $1 billion, in the early days, I had a lot of people tell me, what's the big deal?
Come on.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of doctors are like, what's the big deal? I said, well, send me your patients. And then when they get back to you and tell you what their experience with us was like, then you'll understand what the big deal is. But if you don't give me the opportunity, then you'll never have the opportunity to learn what the big deal is all about. That's perfect. And it took time. I remember one of the docs, we had an open house at our Overland Park location just up the street back in 2013. And this doctor who was super skeptical and he came to the open house, and we had press there and other people. So I was, grabbed by the arm by a bunch of people to go talk. And I can see him wandering around, and he comes out of one of the treatment rooms and he looks down the hall at me and he goes, I get it.
It's the best.
It's like, okay, as long as you get it, Jeff, I'm happy, man. I did my job. All my goals have just been achieved. And he told me later, he said, I could never have imagined all my years in healthcare that you could do this way.
It's the best feeling in the world.
So this is where I think when I look at you and I talk to you, you sound like me in that I came from outside healthcare. And you know why I was able to do what I did? Because I came from outside healthcare. I'm not part of the problem. I'm not part of the context. I look at it and go, context. What the hell are you people doing? You could do this so much easier, so much better, so much cheaper. What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, but you're crazy.
Yeah, you're out of your mind. You can't change everything.
Right.
It's a $3 trillion industry.
One person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like so many people going, wow, what's the big deal?
That's it, man.
Man, it became a big deal.
I feel like I'm at home. No, you're part of my tribe, bro.
Well, I get it. I mean, this is why I was so looking forward to this, because while my experience growing up in the inner city is vastly different than yours, I still got out of there without a college degree. I got out of there without, endorsement from a lot of people. I had many people tell me, "Don't do it. You don't have the credentials to do it. You don't have the chops to get this done, Don. Why would anybody give you $1 million?" Right? Just like you said, why would anybody give you $1.2 million? I don't even know how to put a spreadsheet together, right? And I remember my first venture capital investment. I felt like I got an MBA in a matter of weeks, just closing the deal, reading the contracts, reading it. I mean, like, holy crap, I have to read all this stuff and I have to understand it. And I have to make decisions about the points in this thing and negotiate these things on my own. I don't have anybody to help me. And I thought, man, Don, get your shit together. This is a blessing. This is what you work so hard for. These problems you now have. I remember when the company, this last company was struggling, we didn't have enough cash to pay for all the new patients we were getting, and it was a good problem, right? Well, Don, it's a good problem.
Right.
Yeah, it's still a problem.
Still a problem.
It's still a problem. I want to serve more people. I don't have the money to do it, man.
We would get a grant, right? $50,000, and everybody's celebrating and stuff like that. In my mind, I'm like, bro, that's payroll. Now I got to do accounting. Now I got to do reporting. Like, this isn't a win. This is work. This is more work, right?
Somebody gave me homework to do.
Exactly, right? So I get it. I get it.
But no, so that's why I was really looking forward to this, because I thought we were far more alike than we were different.
Yeah,
we're very different. You're generations, 2 generations younger than me. I'm half white and, kind of dealt with some issues when I was growing up, but nothing like you guys, have dealt with. But the reality is, the things that it takes to accomplish the great things that people can do are still hard.
Yeah.
Really, really hard.
Yeah.
And it takes effort, it takes commitment, it takes passion, it takes everything you've got to make it work. And I see that in your case. And
thank you.
When you tell the story this way, and I hope this gets out to a lot of people, I can't imagine people would look at this and go, they're going to go, how do I help that guy? It was the same with me when I finally got my story out there about what we were doing. I mean, literally, McKesson, the biggest healthcare company in America, literally just picked up the phone and called me one day. I'm standing in my bedroom getting dressed. It's 7 o'clock in the morning here. It's 5 o'clock in the morning there. My phone rings and it's a 415 area code, which is San Francisco. I know it because I used to live out there. I thought, well, shit, I got to answer this call, right? And so this guy introduces himself. Hi, Don, this is Dave Schulte from McKesson Ventures, and we've been watching you guys.
So crazy.
And was just wondering if you needed a financial partner.
I'm wondering if you need a financial partner.
I said, certainly something we would entertain.
Golly.
He said, well, tell me what your struggles are, just like I asked you. And I was saying, here's our problem. We got patients coming. I don't have money to pay for the drugs, things like that. He goes, you know what he said? He said, oh, my God. He said, it's so nice to talk to somebody outside of California. He said, because if I ask that same question of entrepreneurs here in California, they're going to tell me everything is freaking great. Everything is wonderful. Everything is awesome. You said, hey, man, this is a struggle. This is hard. Here's my problems. He said, it was just so nice to talk to somebody who's actually authentic.
Come on,
and is willing to tell his story the way it actually is. He said, okay. He said, now you and I are kindred spirits. He said, so get your butt on a plane and get on out of here.
That's cool, man.
And so I see that in you, the authenticity of you. And that's why I wanted your story. That's why, like I said, you can pitch Lyrik Center or Lyrik Institute in any forum because you would be good at that. But I think that what people will resonate, I hope, is your personal journey and your personal commitment to what you're doing. Because that's everything. The vision leader is who he is or she is, right? And if without them, you don't really have a business. But with them, if they're empowered, if they put enough fuel in your tank, what would you accomplish?
That's good. That's good. And it rings to something that my mentor told me. He was like, Kyle, you're going to be the culture of your organization.
You are.
Your morality, your character, the vices that you give up, that's gonna
you want young people who want to grow up to be just like you.
Yeah,
in spite of all your issues, all the things you did in your past, they want to grow up to be like you.
I want my board to be like me. Well, you know what I mean? Like I want my,
yeah.
And I'm not saying in the sense of like narcissism or anything like that, but I'm saying in the sense of if I don't, who I am, and everybody that comes after me, hypothetically, if they're going to be 20% less than me, then I gotta really step up to the plate, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
So even in my personal life, I have to die to things that the average person doesn't have to die to.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Because I have to set the culture.
Right.
Because I want this thing to last.
Well, you have to be the best version of yourself that you
of
can
myself.
be.
Yeah. And it's so wild that, and I know you know this, like when we get into building big systems and stuff like that, the business shapes you.
Oh,
It knocks you around. It tells you about yourself. It's like, oh, do you care about money more than you care about your family? Like we go through those splits when we're building something from the ground, right?
Yeah.
I had a mental crisis beginning of 2023 because they were saying the way that I was like having the conversations about the money and stuff like that was aggressive. I'm like, I think I'm being very nice. You know what I mean? Because I could be aggressive. You know what I'm saying? And that let me know, like, even my emotional norms aren't even accepted in this business culture, right? So then it's an identity shift. Like, hey, who do I want to be, right?
Yeah.
So then once I plant my feet on, yo, you're gonna have to accept this, and I can make a shift, right? My accountability versus my vulnerability. You know, I began to like really understand. The character of the leader that I wanted to be, right? And it's going to transfer into the way that, you know, our 990s look and our accounts look, and it's going to transfer into the people that we hire because of the standard that's put in place, though, right? And I think that's something as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur and a nonprofit leader. I don't think we spend a lot of time in that area, though, right?
Yeah.
It's personal development, the sacrificial development, and that's something that I also want to offer my donors and my future partners and stuff like that. Is you're working with somebody that says, like, by any means necessary, we're going to get this thing off the ground because it's that important to the community. Even if the leader says that he has to sacrifice himself and the things that he wants to arrive there, right? I think a lot of entrepreneurs do that, but this is just my and I'm biased on this. I heard a lot of guys when I was in prison say the only thing I needed to do was stay out of prison.
Yeah,
I'm like, that's it? Like, nothing else though, right?
Yeah.
So now it's like I just don't want a bunch of money. That's not what I want, man. I want something that's going to last, that's going to have enough integrity, that's going to have enough sustainability to go the distance. And I think that starts with myself, though. So I think that's something that I offer, you know, my team and I offer my donors. You know what I mean? Is that type of accountability and vulnerability.
Well, I think you use the word accountability a lot, and I actually that translates for me to humility. Right? I know I don't know everything. I know I don't do everything perfectly. I know that sometimes my thinking is flawed. But you know what? I'll be accountable to it.
Right.
And you know, if I have to correct, I'll correct. If I need to improve myself, I'll work to improve myself. And I think that's what any leader today needs to be.
Right. Otherwise,
nobody's a dictator. Well, nobody's a dictator, and nobody knows everything. I mean, you just can't.
Exactly.
And, you know, you can use ChatGPT. You can do lots of things to augment your intelligence and what you happen to know in the moment. I mean, you know, I could sit here and look up things on Google and ask you about them. And, you know, we have tools today that allow us to do that. But you know, I don't see you using any notes. I don't see you using any, materials. You didn't try to present anything to me. And that's exactly what I was hoping for in this conversation, because both the authenticity of it and the humility of it just gives fuel to the passion you have for it, because it says it's real. It's real. It's real passion. I'm not putting this on because for whatever moral reasons you might, go out and or virtue signaling and things like that. This isn't about, hey, this is me showing the world that I'm a better person. This is you actually just going and doing shit. And that, the proof is in the outcomes. Proof is in the effort. Sure. And that's what should matter. The accountability for the actual results, not the chit chat.
The chit chat, yeah.
Because,
You're from my tribe, bro. I promise. You
Kyle, I
know.
can't tell you how much I've appreciated
Mhm.
all of this and learning from you things I'm glad I now better understand. I do have one more question, though, for you. You mentioned the church organizations. It was always my theory, and still is, I think, largely, that the faith-based organizations, especially in the inner city, could have a much bigger impact than they're having if they would actually speak from the bully pulpit and actually get involved in the kinds of things that you're doing. Are they? Are they delivering for you? Are you disappointed in what they're doing, or could they be doing more, and how?
So the churches weren't. They were. They were part of the strategic plan for later on down the line to kind of like organize. So for a long time they were that. But when the movement, once we get something, like the movement kind of dissipates, so the unity kind of dissipates. You know what I mean? So then you have to reestablish the objective. So that was a long-term goal. So I didn't really have an expectation from the churches. A lot of our dollars go that way. And what I've learned is they're all doing the work, but they're doing the work with their congregations. You know what I mean? But that's not all.
Collaboration, no systematic approach.
I'm not gonna make a blanket statement. I'm not gonna make a blanket statement and say, because I know a lot of faith-based leaders that are killing it right now, right? And I would never shit on their efforts, right? I would never do that. Yeah. But I will say this though. I think just like the police department, just like juvenile courts and the justice system, I think we all have parts to play, right? But what we need, and this is what I pray that Lyriks continues to be, is a starting place. Yeah. Right? Before I can ever correct, I got to validate. I got to tell them that they're not crazy. And a lot of these other institutions are leading with you're crazy. Like it's just not how it's supposed to be. You're tripping. You should never live like that. You should have never been like this. This is how you should live, right? And Lyriks, the heartbeat of Lyriks is the culture, is the culture, right? Yeah. Accepting that the culture is real. It may look ratchet, it may look rough, it may be whatever it is. But once we get that mindset of saying, yo, you're not crazy, let's get some other solutions. Oh, this church right here, they do pantry very, very well. They do whatever, very, very well. So I think there has to be a body that just accepts people, motivates people, and then activates people. Yeah, right.
And brings all of those pieces together.
Bring them together. It has access, and this is a big piece. Government has all of the stuff that you need. The police, they got caseworkers, therapists, and all the stuff that you need. But if you can't get access to the people that need it the most, then you just got stuff. You got straps on your, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So for me, when it comes to the churches, I just think there needs to be an outside entity that says, yo, church, if your mission is you want to be something for the widows, then be great for the widows, and then we're going to do the case management piece and get them to you. If church, you're saying you do food and that's your niche, do that and be great at that. You know what I'm saying? Because once we start, because ecosystem building is a system and is a monster in itself. So I don't want the church to be thinking about ecosystem building when they're for the widows. You know what I'm saying? I think and that's what Lyriks, and you know, I'm not trying to sell Lyriks, but I'm saying that's what Lyriks has to be. We have to be the ecosystem builder because we have access to that community. Yeah. So that's a long answer for that. I'm not going to, I can't, there's enough bad stigma about churches doing horrible stuff. So I don't want to feed into, you know what I mean? The narrative of.
I don't want to go down that path either. I just wondered mostly about just my own curiosity as to, you know, how are the faith-based organizations helping or hurting or not helping in a way that I think, you know, because I know in the inner city, at least in my growing up, the community was still very, you know, God-fearing and Christian-oriented and things like that, but the Christian values seem to dissipate in certain areas faster than in others. And yet, you know, people still go to church on Sunday. It's like, well, how do you let this shit happen around your, you know, you know, you're not taking care of your house, you're not cleaning up your mess, you're not, you know, doing your part, and yet you show up on Sunday like you're holier than thou. Well, you know what? I mean, God may bless you, but your
Right,
neighbors
right.
don't.
Your neighbors don't. Right.
And this is the reality. You're here now, man.
I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Man, you made a great point. So like the principle is good, and this is what people think, that they got church hurt. No, you got people hurt. You know what I'm saying? The principle of Christianity, and it's really not Christianity, it's called the way, but it's the principle of it is generosity, consideration, humility, all of these things. But when you got people when you got a hospital and you're bringing sick people to the hospital, we don't expect the sick people to be cured when they come into the hospital. You know what I mean? They got to go through the process and come out the other side. Well, everybody that believes or follows this way, they didn't go through the process, right? Church is an organization before it's a, you know what I mean? First it's a faith, then it's an organization. But some people go in it for the organization, right? And then the whole gamut gets, you know, the black eye. So the reason that I answered my question the way that I answered my question was because I never want somebody that has this church baggage or this church hurt to say, Kyle said that, you know, they're not doing their job right. When I really want to say those 6 people over there are killing us in a major way, but we should get them out of there. You know what I'm saying? But you can't say that because can't identify 6 people. So I think, again, I just think that, you know, we gotta allow people to be great at what they're great at, and just like business, you know what I mean. If it's not a good product, pretty soon it's going to fall off, and let's just hope that the ones that aren't doing the you know, the righteous will, you know, of God, that, you know, they tend to fall off faster than everybody else. Right.
Well, Kyle, thank you. I really enjoyed this, and thank you for sharing and being so open. You know, we'll have, I'm sure, comments from people. And I'm looking forward to doing a follow-up with you at some point. That perhaps, you know, we talk about the progress you're making and the impact you're having and things like that. Because you talk a lot about data, and maybe next time, if we do this again, we can talk about some of those metrics. And
for sure.
Let the community know, here's the impact that, you know, Lyrik's is having. And
sure, I would love that.
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
All right,
appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Sure.